Gene Wilder, welcome to Hardtalk Extra.
Thank you.
A lot of your life reads a bit like the classic funny sad guy or sad funny guy, doesn't it? You've managed to combine both in some ways.
Well, that was my life. I think it was mostly funny, happy in the last half. There was a lot of sadness in the first half. But they're so mixed together. It's like, you know, what do they call it? Homogenized milk? When they mix the cream and the milk and you can't tell the difference. I'm very happy today, but I had some rough times earlier on. I was nuts. I was a little crazy. I don't mean psychotic, but I was quite neurotic when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 20, till about 30. And I got a lot of help. And now I'm as sane as can be.
One thing that really struck me throughout the book was how you managed to, in some ways, compartmentalize. For instance, I mean, when your then wife Gilda Radner was dying of cancer, you were nursing her and writing funny stuff at the same time. I find that very difficult to understand how you could do that.
I do too, but it saved me. Because while she was upstairs, in our bedroom upstairs, reacting to the chemo and throwing up and having a commode next to the bed and suffering a lot, I would come downstairs and write for maybe 25 minutes, 30 minutes on See No Evil, Hear No Evil, that I was writing for Richard Pryor and myself, then go up to see how she was doing, and then come down, up and down. It was a strange thing, but trying to be funny, you'd say either it's impossible or it's a great relief, and it was a great relief for me.
An escape.
Yeah, yeah.
The fact that you could make people laugh while enduring so much sadness in your personal life also struck me as extraordinary.
She always liked a good laugh. She always wanted me to, you think, you know, I'm a funny guy, Mel Brooks, humor and all that. I'm not that funny in real life. I can be, but not by trying. If it just happens spontaneously, I am.
But that's an expectation that people have. I mean, we can talk about it. You know, people, why doesn't he tell jokes? Why isn't he telling jokes all the time?
Well, it's the difference between a comedian and a comic actor. Well, comedians can be sad too, but I'm not sad now. But I don't like to have to perform. I don't want to shock your audience, but I don't care for show business. I like show. I don't like the business. So I'm in Connecticut near the woods and not in Hollywood. I spent about 9 years there at one point in my life, and I liked it. It was a great change for me. But I don't want to be on all the time. And out there they expect you. Well, everyone expects a funny man that they've seen in the movies. You see the producers in Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein and Stir Crazy and Silver Street. Well, why? Tell us a joke, or why aren't you funny? Or why? But I'm not. I'm not like that. Unless it just happens spontaneously.
You were born Jerome Silberman in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jerome Silberman.
Yeah, that's right.
Not the name that you saw in Lights, clearly. Otherwise, you wouldn't have changed it.
Everyone called me Jerry, and I couldn't see Jerry or Jerome Silberman in Macbeth, because I had aspirations at that time to do Hamlet, Macbeth, whatever. I had done quite a bit of Shakespeare early on, not as a professional, but in university.
But it was serious stuff. I mean, it was always serious stuff for you, wasn't it?
Sure. I mean, the only difference between me and another actor who you might say is a really funny actor in films is that the route I took was through Stanislavski, the actor's studio. First order of business is to create the life of a human being. Second order is make choices that are funny and that the audience will like, not the other way around. Whereas a comedian, first order of business, make them laugh, you know. And I studied for altogether about 18 years. I started at 13, but the hardcore of what I use today, the technique I have, is really from the actor's studio, Lee Strasberg and the actor's studio.
Your own childhood, though, was marred by your mother's illness.
Yeah.
heart disease and this terrible burden it placed on you. I mean, tell the story of what the doctor told you as an 8-year-old.
I was 7 or 8, I forget. I guess 8. In the book it says 8.
In the book it says 8.
Well, then it must be 8. And the book doesn't lie. My mother had her first big heart attack, her first heart attack, when I was 8. And the doctor brought her home from the hospital with my father and saw to her comfort in bed and so on. Then he came out to see me, and he took me by the arm. He was a big fellow. It was summer, and the sweat was dripping off his face onto my face. And he pulled me over, leaned down, and he said, "Don't ever argue with your mother because you might kill her." While I was trying to digest that lightning bolt, he said, "Try to make her laugh." And if he hadn't said those 2 sentences, I don't know that we would be here talking now. I might have gone into used car salesman or something like that, or a concert violinist, or perhaps a painter.
So he was, this doctor, under these most awful circumstances, was actually, in a way,
but he set off something terrible in me, because don't ever argue with your mother.
When you're 8.
When I was 8, inhibited me from getting angry with anyone and holding it all in, and that's poison. If a young boy, if anyone, has to hold in their anger, it has great repercussions. I mean, rotten repercussions. You don't know what's going to happen. It's like a tea kettle. You're boiling water to make tea, but if there wasn't a little hole, that kettle would explode. And I came close to exploding several times. I mean, for about 15 years. I was in a lot of trouble. And when I went to, I was in the Army, peacetime Army. I went to a neuropsychiatric hospital. That was my duty. And they gave me a choice of working on the tubercular ward. I said, no, thanks. And general hospital, cleaning up, making beds and cleaning up vomit, and administration, sterilization of equipment, or a locked ward in a neuropsychiatric hospital. And I said that one, because I thought that would be the closest to acting that would help me later on, and it certainly did. But when I saw those patients come in straitjackets, because everyone had to, they were all going through psychotic phases, and I saw their behavior. One boy in particular, I remember, every morning while they were all watching Amos and Andy at the TV set, about 10:30, 11, he'd come down in the middle of the TV set, blocking the view of all the other patients, and he'd start praying to the TV set. And I said, well, he's psychotic, but he's not that much more extreme than my compulsions right now. And that's when I decided to get help when I got out of the Army. And I did, and I found the right person.
You got therapy.
Yeah.
You've had a compulsion about praying.
Praying, yeah.
As well. And can you explain that? Because in the book, you do explain it, but it's very difficult to understand.
Yes, I'm sure it is. I'm sure. And this all starts with, don't ever argue with your mother, because you might kill her. And the other, she suffered all the time. But I didn't put 2 and 2 making 4 until after 7.5 years of therapy. But when I was 18, in the spring, almost the first day of March, in my freshman year at university, I had this compulsion to pray. About what? I didn't know, but to ask forgiveness of God. So I would pray for 15 minutes. And I thought, now it's done. The next day it was 25, 30 minutes. It went on, not every day, but every other, every third, for several years, except when I was on stage. Then I felt safe. But, I mean, they couldn't get me.
Who were they?
I don't know. I didn't know.
But you had to pray anyway.
But I felt this, I can't say need, and I didn't think of it as holy anymore. I thought it was rotten. It had nothing to do with God, but I had to do it. I said, what horrible sin have I committed that requires my begging for God's forgiveness for something I've done and I don't know what the thing is. After 7.5 years of therapy, my therapist could have told me on the first day, but I had to tell myself, find out why. And it was that, what right did I have to have happiness, sexual pleasure? Hormones were kicking in at that time. I was quite young. And when my mother was suffering every day of her life. And you could say, yes, but that wasn't your fault. Well, I couldn't say it. Someone could say it to me, but I couldn't say it. I knew it wasn't my fault that she had a heart attack, and yet I thought, but do I really have the right to enjoy myself and laugh and have fun if she's sick and suffering all the time, every day?
At this stage in your life, you found yourself with Lee Strasberg, regarded as one of the greatest teachers of acting ever.
Yeah.
How did you get from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to that point?
When I was 11 years old, I saw my sister, Corinne, in what was called a dramatic recital of Guy de Maupassant's The Necklace. She had memorized, it was an audience of maybe 200 people, and they were jabbering away, and then the lights started to go down, and then it was dark, and a spotlight hit the center of the stage, and out came my sister in this aqua gown. And for 20 minutes, you could hear a pin drop, and the audience just watched her and listened to her. And I thought, that must be about as close to being God as you could get as a human being. And I asked her teacher afterwards, her acting teacher, could I study with you? He said, how old are you? And I said, 11. He said, if you still want to when you're 13, come and see me. So the day after my 13th birthday, I went to see him, and then I started studying. And studying there, and then, you know, when you do well in high school and then university, you're thinking more and more, maybe I could do this professionally. And then I went to the Bristol Old Vic, and then Uta Hagen was a very famous teacher and actress, and Herbert Berghoff, her husband, and then Lee Strasberg and the Actors Studio. And that was the study that helped me the most in what I do consciously now.
There's parts in the book where you say you were acting something, and then suddenly something clicks in and you're no longer acting. Of course you're acting, but you are the person that you're supposed to be. You actually are that person. How did you get to that point?
I had read about that in An Actor Prepares by Stanislavski. And it's tapping the subconscious. You're not the real you're not the character, and you're not yourself. You're, let's say, if I was doing Hamlet, I'm Gene Hamlet. You're half of you. You're using the character. You're using the lines that the author wrote, but you're borrowing from those experiences in your life, those emotional memories that you have, and loaning them to the character. Those that fit. Those that don't fit, you don't use. So it's sort of a combination of yourself and Shakespeare or Tennessee Williams or Arthur Miller, whoever. It's a melding of the two together.
How did you make the translation to Hollywood and the funny man that everybody thinks that you are, because that's what we see in the Hollywood version, you know?
Yeah.
And whereas, you know, Arnold Wesker, Graham Greene, Bertolt Brecht, Shakespeare, we've talked about the much more serious side of you, which I think many people are not familiar with.
Well, when I was, the first play I did on Broadway was Graham Greene's The Complacent Lover with Sir Michael Redgrave and Googie Withers and Richard Johnson. And it was a comic performance, and I was good, and I won an award for it. And then I did Mother Courage with Anne Bancroft, whose boyfriend was Mel Brooks, whom I'd never met. And, and Anne said, I'd like you to meet my boyfriend, Mel. And I came backstage after the performance one night, and there he was in this beautiful, what they used to call pea jackets, merchant marine, black, thick jacket, keep you warm. It was pretty chilly out, and he was wearing that, and I said, "Oh, and how lovely to meet you," and everything. And, "Oh, you look so handsome in that pea jacket." He said, "Yeah, they used to call them urine jackets, but they didn't sell." So I started laughing, and then he watched me perform in that play, Mother Courage, so many times, and then he said, "Would you like to come to Fire Island," which is a little island off of Long Island, one weekend, and I've written a screenplay, and I'll read you the first 30 pages. It's called Springtime for Hitler. I said, "Oh, I'd like that very much." So I went one weekend, and we had a nice dinner that Anne cooked, and then Mel read the first 30 pages. And they're almost the same as the script is, as it is in the movie, the producers now. And then he said, "Would you like to play Leo Bloom in the movie?" And I said, "Oh, I would very much." He said, "Okay. Well, in the fall, don't you take anything on Broadway until you check with me." So in September, late September, I was offered One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Not the movie, but the play with Kirk Douglas. And I called Mel. I said, "I feel a little silly, but you said I should." Yeah. "Now, can you get a 2-week out in your contract?" I said, "Oh, Mel, I'm not a star. They're not going to give me a 2-week out. Maybe if a 4-week out, maybe I could." "All right, we'll have to live with it," he said. 3 years went by. I never heard from him. I didn't get a telephone call. I didn't get a telegram, nothing. And I was doing a play by Murray Schiskal called Love, L-U-V. And after a matinee, I was taking my makeup off. I knock on the door. I opened the door, and there was Mel with a tall gentleman behind him. I said, "Mel." He said, "You don't think I forgot, do you?" And he said, "I've got the money now to make Springtime for Hitler." And this is our producer, Sidney Glazier. The only thing is, Zero Mostel has approval over whoever plays Leo Bloom. So you're going to have to read for him. I want you, but Zero has to see you and say yes. So I went the next day. My heart was pounding. I thought that you could hear it all over the room. I knocked on the door, and Mel opened the door, and I saw Zero Mostel in the background. And I came in, and he said, "Gene, this is Z. Z, this is Gene." And I put out my hand to shake hands with Zero Mostel, and he pulled me up to his chest, and he kissed me on the lips. A big, long kiss. And all the nervousness drained out of my body. And I think he wasn't trying to be funny. He was trying to help me. And it worked.
Leo Bloom, you play a neurotic.
Yes.
Was that easy?
Easy.
Where the Stanislavski school, you could draw on experience.
Yes. If you wish to take another hour or two, I'll be happy to tell you how.
Let's talk, if we can, just a little bit about your own battle with illness. You were diagnosed a few years ago with non-Hodgkin's
lymphoma.
And as we've said, illness has touched you and people important to you for a very, very long time. How bad was the struggle? How difficult was it?
When I found out that I had it, and well, I had several chemotherapies at home in where I live, and the doctor was so pleased with everything that he cut it down from 9. He said, I'm just going to give you 6 chemotherapies." This was the hematological oncologist. And I called my friend in Los Angeles, Edward Feldman, who was a gastroenterologist, to tell him the good news. And he said, "I'm very happy for you, Gene, but I'm not content. Not until you see Carol Portlock at Sloan Kettering in Manhattan." And I made an appointment. I saw her. And she said, "You're very healthy, Mr. Wilder, and you're very chemo-responsive, but it's going to come back." And my jaw dropped, and I said, "When?" She said, 6 months. She had tissue samples and everything. And I said, "Well, what do I do?" She said, "Stem cell transplant." It's not embryonic stem cells, the big controversy with...
Would that have worried you? Would that have been a moral decision if it had been embryonic stem cells?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No.
But it is for a lot of... Well, it is for the Bush administration.
Not for any normal people. It wouldn't have been.
Of course, they're not sick with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you were.
Yeah. Christopher Reeve I was waiting and waiting. I saw him about 3-4 weeks before he died at the U.S. Tennis Open, and he was waiting for the stem cell transplant with...
From embryonic stem cells?
Yeah. I had what they call autologous, which just came from my own blood. But I was in the hospital for, they said count on 5 to 6 weeks. I was there for 3 weeks and 5 days. And unlike the times when Gilda was suffering from all the nausea, there's a wonderful drug called Zofran. I wasn't sick for 1 day, not even 1 minute. I had other things wrong, but I wasn't nauseous at all.
How are you now?
Well, I said to my doctor, now that it's 5.5 years, what do I say? He said, say you're in complete remission. I said, but what if they want to know, what does that mean? Am I cured? He said, well, cured has to do with actuary tables, the insurance company, how long you're expected to live if you didn't have... Just say, if you outlive your doctor, you're cured. So I thought the best way to guarantee that I'm cured is to shoot my doctor.
Well, he's got a surprise waiting for him when you get back, hasn't he?
But I am as close to, I mean, they don't like to use the word cure. There's remission and there's complete remission. I'm in complete remission, so I don't have anything anymore.
I just wanted to ask you one point about that, though. When Gilda died, you became a campaigner to raise awareness about ovarian cancer.
Yes.
Now, given the controversy in America about embryonic stem cell research and so on, do you feel any kind of duty to campaign about that against the prevailing tide within the Bush administration? Do you feel you should raise your voice?
Not to campaign, because there are so many people who are campaigning, who have campaigned, when at the Democratic Convention, Ronnie Reagan made a beautiful speech.
That's Ronald Reagan's
son. And Nancy Reagan and Christopher Reeve, and then in California they voted as a state to allow embryonic stem cell research, and in Connecticut, my state, they voted to allow stem cell research. So I don't have to campaign. Most of the country, and I think most of Congress is for it. But until we get rid of Bush, it's going to be a while before it'll be allowed as a federal project. But a state project, it can be.
Gene Wilder, thank you very much.